families through leadership and through the childcare services that you provide. Michelle, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Good to be here.
We are a family show. We love to hear origin stories. Tell us how you came up. Are you native to Erie, or are you transplanted?
Native to Erie. I met my husband in 10th grade.
What school were you
We
at?
went to, well, it was then called Tech.
Sure.
So we dated right after I graduated. It was the dimples and the beautiful white teeth. Fell in love.
You were centaurs,
We
right?
were Tech centaurs.
That's amazing.
Fell in love and have been married ever since. Have twin boys. They're 31 and my daughter's 25.
That's like exactly the same age range for my kids. I have my second son is 31 and my daughter's 25.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Wow.
So we're in that same mode here, and
Same age group.
growing up in that neck of the woods, in that time period here, in Erie, you were just starting to get two family incomes, right? A lot of times it was one of the spouses worked, one of the spouses stayed home.
Correct. I came from a single parent home. So my parents were divorced when I was 3. My mom was amazing, raised me and my sister. I respect the working parent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they do it. Even two parents to juggle working and finding quality care for their children is a tremendous challenge, especially these days. Yes.
Probably, though, back in the day,
Correct.
the need for childcare was limited
Very limited.
And you think about how ethnic Erie is, right? And so a lot of times you had these big Italian, Polish, German, Irish families. Grandma and Grandpa were there watching the kids if the parent had to go.
And cooking and loving the children up and
Yeah.
raising them and keeping them safe. And yes, they were always around, but that's not the case anymore.
Sure
It's
isn't.
changed quite a bit.
There's been a lot of studies that have been going around here, and one of the statistics I think was that there's I want to say 2,500 slots for that. That's the demand in Erie County right now for childcare from this early childhood establishment. Does that ring true to what you're seeing at Early Connections?
Yes, we have wait lists. It's, we can serve the children. There are empty classrooms, not because the children aren't there. The staff, we need quality staff to work in the classrooms to take care of the children. So there are children that need that care so their parents can go to work.
All right,
Parents
yeah.
want to work.
Parents want to work.
They want to go to work, and it's hard sometimes when a parent has to choose to be home to take care of the children and not work. That does damage to their household income and what they can afford, and sometimes they have to make that hard choice. It's tough.
Let's see if we can unpack this thing in buckets here. So let's say the first bucket is we do have declining. Let's go on the demand side. So we do have declining birth rates, right? And
Correct.
so there's actually less children and babies to watch, but there's higher demand because it takes two incomes to kind of make it these days.
Yes.
Right?
They talk about even the ALICE families, asset limited, income constrained, employed. So that means they're just above that poverty level, but they have those college, tuition bills that they need to pay off for going to school. They have medical bills. They have to take care of their family. They have to feed the family, pay for their mortgage or rent. It's a lot. It's a lot on the families.
For people in that vulnerable state and for people that are below the poverty line, what kind of programs are there available to help with child care expenses?
So there's multiple opportunities. We have for the lowest income families, there's Head Start, and that's in Erie County. That's provided by the Child Development Centers, and that's a wonderful program. And then
that's a full-time thing? That's not just a limited time period?
it's a limited time, but it provides
Okay.
transportation. It provides some medical support. They work with the families. It's a really good program.
Okay.
And that's a funding stream. There's federal funding for that, and also some state. It's called HISAP. It's an acronym. Funding. So to support the owner of that Head Start
Okay.
contract.
So if you
that's one.
So that's one.
Yes.
If you are in this Alice state where you don't really qualify, what's available that way?
So that's where you get stuck. So
Okay.
you have Head Start. You have pre-K counts for children who are up to 2 years prior to kindergarten. You can go to a pre-K count.
What is that? What is that called?
That's free preschool.
Free preschool is
that
called.
is
It's called pre-K counts.
Pre-K counts, and that's a state-run program. There are many centers across Erie County and the state that provides pre-K counts.
So you guys have been
opportunities.
certified to be able to provide that.
You have to be a high-quality center or have Head Start funding, or there's different. You have to fit into these different. You have to be qualified.
Yeah.
To offer that.
Is everybody eligible for pre-K counts?
No.
So
No,
that's
there's a
needs
cap.
based.
That's
Okay.
yes. So and then there is CCW, which is Childcare Subsidy. So that serves those our littlest learners, the babies, 6 weeks up, and up. They can, if the family qualifies, they could receive childcare subsidy.
Okay.
And that would pay for their care at a child care center. And the family needs to pay, typically they need to pay a certain amount weekly on top of that.
Now, I didn't ask if you had an accounting degree, and you don't
No.
play a tax. You're not a tax
No, I do
preparer or
not.
nor play one on TV, right?
Gosh, no.
But there is some tax benefit for childcare, correct? And I think our Kingdom Moment's going to talk about this too. But
Yes, there is a child care tax credit for people who have, but that's not my area of expertise, so families can get a credit on their income tax for that.
Okay,
yes.
so that could take the edge off as well, and you'd want to
That
see a
helps.
financial advisor for that. So, but as far as direct care or some, it's not set up, for example, like free public school for like
Correct.
K to
Correct.
12.
So
K to
there's-
12, you walk in to your local school and everything's provided for you.
Right, correct. So I would say to that, because everybody talks about universal pre-K or universal childcare, that sounds lovely. That really does. But remember, we need to make sure that these are quality centers. So you need to look at the environment. You need to look at, the staff, the quality of staff, what kind of credentials they have. You need to look at how you serve the families. If there's a family engagement, you need to look at all these things. So to say, yes, we should have universal pre-K or we should have universal childcare, absolutely, it would be great if we could do that. It would be terribly expensive, but remember, we need to have a quality rating system to be able to look at that and provide safe, quality, consistent fair care to the families.
Yeah, I think I want to get a little bit later. I want to get into the different categories of facilities and of programs because I think that's hugely important because there's multiple ways that people get childcare, right?
Yes.
From a supportive family member to an organization. As far as how it pencils out, let's talk about the finances of this.
Okay.
I have no idea what one child in childcare would cost. And does it change? Like, is it more
tell
or
you.
less expensive the earlier that if you're bringing a 3-month-old, again, my family medical leave just ended, I've got to go back to work. Is that more expensive than maybe the 3-year-old coming out of P3?
Absolutely. So I would say that in a high quality center to serve an infant, right now, there's a cost gap of over $10,000. So you have to look at, yes.
So what does that mean? A cost
So
gap?
that means that when a child is receiving CCW funding, childcare funding, we may be getting reimbursed $13,912, but it actually costs over
Almost
a lot. Yes,
almost 2,000 a month.
Yes, it costs like 25,000. Honestly, for a quality, so to meet the regulations and the quality expectations, and you have to remember, in a classroom for an infant, it's 1 to 4, so one teacher for every 4 babies.
Yes.
And that's a lot. I
Sure.
had twins, and that was busy enough. 4 is a lot, and there's a lot of expectations.
So if I
that
was
go with that.
paying out of pocket, would I have to pay that 25 grand for that baby?
For some centers. Other centers try to do a sliding fee scale for families to qualify. You know, they look at their income
Sure.
and they try to help fit them. Do they qualify for CCW? Is there some funding that can help a family, because families struggle? I've heard people.
But if I'm an associate attorney making $75,000 a year, that first 25 grand could go for that baby, right?
Could, I don't want
And
to
it-
judge.
well, I'm no,
but
I'm,
yes,
just, I'm
yes.
just, I'm just
Yes.
spitballing this stuff. You could be paying 25 grand for childcare, and you know, your car expenses and all your ancillaries,
loans.
college loans.
Yes.
You're already, you know, you burn through 50% of your gross income.
Yes.
That's
So how do
really
you
a
do that?
remarkable thing, isn't it?
It is. And I've heard people say just charge the parents more so you can make up for that cost gap. We have parents, you know, both working, that say if you raise your fees anymore, we're not going to be able to send our child here, and we'll have to figure something else out, like a relative care.
Yeah.
So they would miss out on that opportunity of those soft skills, those socialization skills that quality centers provide.
We're talking to Michelle Harkins here. She's the executive director of Early Connections. Again, this very, very deep, complicated, yet very real issue of childcare in Erie County, Pennsylvania. It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Fascinating conversation with Michelle Harkins. She's the executive director of Early Connections here. If that name rings a bell, it's the old YWCA from 25 years ago, mind you.
Yeah, 130 years. The YWCA has been a part of Erie County, so I'm pretty proud of that. Learned how to swim there.
Yes.
And children were served there. We still have some of our staff. We have a bus driver that is still with us that used to drive the bus for the YW. So proud to have the long-term staff on
I'm
board.
trying to remember where it was downtown, because they used to have a downtown facility.
So
at the
yes,
I think it was over on 10th or something.
All over the place.
Yeah,
all over the place. Yes,
that's awesome. All right, I'm breaking up this very complicated issue into buckets. So we kind of started with the concept of like cost and of programming and so on. I want to, before the bottom of the hour, I want to talk about this quality thing, because there is a what are they, Keystone Stars program. Can you talk about this?
So every parent that's looking for a quality center should know about the Keystone Stars, and you can just Google it and it'll come up. It's a quality rating system through the state of Pennsylvania. They look at each center that is certified, has the DHS stamp of approval, and then that starts at a Stars 1. Stars 1 is the lowest star, and then you go up to Stars 4. Stars 4 is the highest, and that looks at the quality of your staff, the environment, the benefits you give your staff, the engagement with the families, all of those things that make also the curriculum. So did you know there's even curriculum for our littles, our infants? There are things that we do to keep them busy, to help their brains grow and develop. So all of those things are state-approved things that look at the quality. We have someone that comes into our centers, make sure that we have all of our ducks lined up for our children and the classrooms, but also to have all of the documentation, the policies that are needed to run a tight ship.
So let's talk about facilities first. I would imagine has to be up to current code, everything from like sprinklers and multiple floors. You have to have an elevator. I mean, all the things that are very expensive, right? I mean,
absolutely. You have to have that, and you have to have it inspected yearly. We have to go through the fire inspection yearly, and of course, that's important.
Sure.
We have these regulations because something happened to a child, right? So we want to keep our children safe and sound.
Yeah. And then again, staffing, right?
Yeah.
So what does a 4-star or 3-star facility have to have? Or most or all those staff have formal education in early childhood?
Yes, the first credential is a CDA, which is a Child Development Associate degree. That's the first certificate, and then it goes on to the associates and bachelors, depending on what type of classroom, whether it be a pre-K counts classroom, infant toddler contracted slots. That's also another funding stream that could serve our little learners. Depending on the classroom, that depends on the type of credentials you need. The first is the CDA, and then it moves on up.
How does that work? So the younger the child, you could maybe do more with a CDA, but you might want a bachelor's at a 3-4-year-old or whatever? Or?
Bachelors are always welcomed because you are shaping minds.
My understanding is that that's a popular major. And we'll talk about workforce after the break, but it is a popular major, is early childhood.
It's growing, and there's opportunities to go, and we could talk about it later, to go to school for free. There's funding streams because you can't pay the teachers a good pay.
So if you can kind of get them into the stream with their credentials.
Yes. And as the credentials grow, the pay scale can grow. Ideally, for pre-K counts teacher, the hourly rate is mandated to begin at $33 an hour. So that's for 9 months out of the year. That would be the very lowest if you have all of your credentials for pre-K counts. So that's an ECE certification, bachelor's degree. That's the starting hourly rate. Now, I was
going to say that's over $60,000.
So
$66,000 a year. That's more than an entry level Erie police officer makes.
That's
a pretty good deal.
Yes. So if you look at, and I think I have the numbers here though, a childcare worker if we look at hourly rates,
Yeah.
so they could start as low as $12 to $14,
Right.
depending, and then it goes up.
And the parts of this story that we've covered have to do with, how do you keep people in the workforce, which we'll talk about. You have to get wages above what can be competitive at a Walmart or Target or something like that.
Yes, because last time I saw you could work at Sheets for $17 an hour.
Exactly,
with
yes.
benefits. So,
Yeah.
yes. And
the-
you're not worrying about little lives.
One more thing about the quality system. Is it only affect like the large organizations, or can you have a neighborhood or a family type of childcare and be qualified as with stars?
Absolutely. And I think the ELRC 1, the Region 1, the Early Learning Resource Center, they have a lot of supports for the home care, facilities that provide care.
So this is a organization that provides support and assets to some of the smaller
Yes.
groups.
Yes, they're great. So they manage the child care subsidy, the CCW. They provide supports to the centers to help them grow in quality. And they also inspect them, make sure that they qualify for their STARS level. So there's a lot of supports that's offered to child care centers, whether it be a home-based care or a center, a private, center.
So again, as an administrator of one of the larger centers in town, would you say that that the ecosystem in childcare needs all of these types of places?
Yes, because what works for one family might not work for the other. I mean, it depends on the need of the family to where they go.
Mm-hmm.
I always insist, look at quality, look at what that. One director told me one time.
Hold that thought, because we're going to jump to the hard break at the bottom of the hour. I want to hear more about this, because I think this is an important part, because these are hugely personal decisions. Michelle Harkins is with us. Early Connections. Stay with us. It's Talk Erie. It's a fast hour here on Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show as we talk about one of those crucial issues that we're dealing with as a community here. It's childcare. We're live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here. I've got Michelle Harkins with me. She's the executive director of Early Connections. She's educating us on the ecosystem here in Erie for childcare. And you had a story about, we were kind of talking about all the different places that people can find childcare. What was that story?
Yes, you have to look at the individual needs, what the family needs. But I'll never forget, her name is Dottie, and she runs the Growing and Learning Center. And she said to me years ago, if families would spend as much time looking at a center before they enrolled their child, as much as they looked at buying a new car, spending time in the car to make sure it's running right and it feels good on the road. So if they spent that much time, they would see the kind of quality that the center provides. And she said, it's so important for a parent to see inside the center. That's why I think it's important. Parents always look at, Keystone Stars, look at what Stars for demands our centers to have, and see if the center that you're enrolling your child, if you go to a center, make sure that they have those quality characteristics.
The feds kind of started with this too, of even designating this high quality care center, right? I mean, isn't there a designation there, Michelle?
But what does that mean? So if it's federally, what does quality mean? It means different, just like an ice cream cone, right?
Right.
So there's different flavors of an ice cream cone, and I would guarantee if you walked into different centers throughout Erie County that's a Stars 3 or a Stars 4, they might be designated that Stars 4, but they might have a different flavor to them. You have to, and it's all quality, but you just have to find what works best for the family. And families, don't be afraid to go to another center that's close by. Talk to other parents that have their children at the centers. That's crucial.
Before I forget, I want to ask about, a lot of our conversations are very Erie city focused, or, the urban area. So maybe Erie, Mill Creek, Harbor Creek or whatever, Westerville, Lawrence Park. But as you go out into in the more rural areas of Erie County, Union City, Corey, Albion and Cranesville, is it get like really more difficult for childcare, like in a Girard or in a East Springfield?
So I would say we have our center in Union City.
Yeah.
Corey, I know the Corey Y's out there. There's a lot of childcare deserts, and the things
they call them childcare
deserts. So there's not a lot of childcare centers around that are higher quality for families. So when you look at those centers that are available, and the further you go out, the more it's a little bit more sparse.
Yeah.
Transportation. So if you want to get your child into a preschool so they're ready for kindergarten, and maybe they might be a little bit behind, so preschool will help them, a quality center will help them, try to catch up and get the services they need. Sometimes they might not have the transportation to get there. So that transportation is a big barrier, out in the county and beyond.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about the workforce, because that's kind of really where the rub is. This is where, you had the Community Foundation and the Jefferson had their white paper, Court Gold, and we still need to bring Court in to kind of give us an update on where they're at. But the bottom line is that because there are something like, 1,500 slots or whatever or maybe it's 2,500 slots that could be filled. There's that much demand out there. We need the supply of childcare workers. And the rub seems to be people that are called to this and the money to be able to pay them, because it has to pencil out for an administrator like you, right? You're saying even at your high level, half the time your reimbursements from the government don't pencil out at all.
No, and I have to answer to my board. So
yeah, sure.
I would love to pay my staff their worth, but we can't afford it. So I do a lot of advocacy. I'm on the PNACE board, which is the Pennsylvania Association for the Education of Young Children. I try to stick consistent with their message, because it's important that we need to talk to, our state and federal legislators about the childcare system's broken. How can we work together to adequately fund our teachers, because they have the hardest job in the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we talked to the governor about this ourselves, and again, he's saying that he's trying to pour $50 million, just to kind of make a start and try to build up and give incentives to centers, to be able to do signing bonuses and things like that. There's a lot of money kind of flowing around, but what is it going to take? First off, how do you help young people, let's say a ninth grader, discover that, boy, childcare working would be a great pathway for me as a career?
Here's the neat thing. So in 2018, they rolled out the Registered Early Childhood Apprenticeship Program model. And that was the 1199C Training and Upgrading Fund in Philadelphia. Cheryl Feldman talked about how can we model this apprenticeship program and pre-apprenticeship program that you see, for welders and electricians.
Yeah.
How can you model that for early childhood? And she came up with a solution. She worked with the PA state system of higher education, came up with a wonderful model, and we went to a meeting with Penn West leadership and wanted to make this happen in our region because childcare staffing is a crisis. It's beyond a crisis. So when you look at the high schoolers, there's a pre-apprenticeship program. Early Connections is a sponsor for the registered pre-apprenticeship program for the Northwest region. There are students that are in high school that choose early childhood as their field of study. So they can graduate with their first credential, the CDA.
And right at 18 when they graduate from high school.
Correct.
Wow.
And they can start observing and being in the classroom with teachers. They can't be alone yet, but they could be in the classroom working with the children and decide if that role that's right for them once they graduate.
At a quality center, what would a CDA expect to be bringing home?
It all depends on the center. It can run between $14.50 and I heard some are providing $20 an hour. So
between $14 and $20 an hour.
Yes.
Right out of high school, no debt. I mean,
right.
Making, even if they made $17.50, making 38 grand a year, that ain't chicken feed. That's a decent starting wage.
Right. So those high schoolers, we talked to them about the pre-apprenticeship program. We work with the Northwest region. We have 9 partners right now across the region. We have 10 that we work with. We provide dual enrollment opportunities so they can earn college credits while they're in high school, like some of the other students in different fields of study. They can also get that CDA and then take the next steps. We can help them with employment and then further opportunities to go to school.
Kind of stack their skills like a nurse would.
Correct.
This is very much of a nursing kind of model, right?
Yes.
So you get that CDA, you could get an assignment, you'd get a full-time job, maybe make 36 to 40,000 a year
if you're lucky.
You're lucky. But you're saying that's not so much the deal?
It starts a little bit lower. It starts a little bit. The 20 is rather on the high end, so usually 14, maybe even a little bit lower sometimes for the CDA. But there's opportunities for growth.
So it might be 28 to 38.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's where it gets dicey. That's when you're starting. That when you have a kid right out of high school and they could go to Hobby Lobby and make 18, that's a problem.
Yes, it's a big problem. So that's what we.
It's not a problem for Hobby Lobby. It's a problem for your industry, right?
Yes.
So how do you? Some people would say, somebody would be screaming at the radio saying, "Well, just pay them more money."
How do we do that without running our business under? And people have ran their businesses under. We need to be fiscally responsible. We need to look at what we can afford to provide them. We need to look at, can we provide other benefits that maybe other agencies couldn't provide. So it's very competitive out there. And I noticed that there's a lot of, someone mentioned it's almost like musical chairs. You see staff going to different
centers. So there is
centers.
Some poaching going on.
Yeah, unfortunately, because everyone needs good teachers, really good teachers. And the credentials of the teacher help determine the quality of your center. So when you look at the pre-apprenticeship program, registered pre-apprenticeship program, when you're hiring someone with a CDA, that raises the level of quality at your center and could provide maybe even some higher CCW, childcare subsidy reimbursement. So if you look at a CDA or higher, that's going to help the overall picture of the center.
So again, the more letters after your workers' names, the better for the center, and so that's why those people are highly desired. What do you hear from the universities? Again, you mentioned that people can go on, get their their bachelor's degree and an associate's degree or what have you. Again, they're trying to convince students to choose majors. If they come out with a bachelor's in early childhood education, what are their options that way?
Oh gosh, they are very marketable. So I would tell every student that's in early childhood, even coming out of high school, if you have that CDA, you're wanted. Like, you're a marketable. You have many options. Choose wisely. Look at different centers where you would want to go. So if you have, what we're finding from our partner higher ed institutions is that they have wait lists to get into the early childhood program.
Okay, so those are popular programs.
Yes. So, and that's because there are funding opportunities to pay for their schooling. So, as a registered pre-apprenticeship program, we try to help provide that feed, and we're also the intermediary for the registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship program in that model. So we're trying to find other funding supports to help the students, connect them with mentors. If a student is going to school and working with someone who works at the center, has the same degree or higher, there's their mentor. They're learning from rock stars that work with children 40 hours a week. So we're trying to bring up the skill set in the centers.
So it sounds like to me, tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds like there seems to be a significant amount of demand from young people to step into this field. The issue that you all are having is that it doesn't pencil out to pay them what they might be able to get paid somewhere else. And so we've got to figure that out, and maybe that's where the government subsidies, the Shapiro types of programs, $50 million toward child care. What we're hearing from the county. You have you have the county gaming revenue and the city, the county itself coming together $5 million to be deployed here in Erie County. That could, but they might need that though to build more. Don't you need more buildings or no?
Well, so I'm thankful to County Council, to EGRA, to the ELRC, Jefferson Education Society, Court Gold, great person, and the team that work with him to provide, here are the next steps. A lot of research went into the next steps for Erie County. They talk about initially working on retention, grants for our staff, which is great. So that's someone who's been working for at least a year, they get a bonus, which is a wonderful thing for our staff all across the board. Then they talk about the next steps will be to expand or open up classrooms. I would strongly suggest there are children waiting to get in. We need to get the empty classrooms open first before we build new centers.
There's no doubt about that.
Because that's a concern.
So how much building capacity you think is out there? How many kids could we handle, you think?
That I don't know. We need to look at.
But how about you guys? Do you think you can handle another 50 children?
Yes.
In your rooms?
Yes.
Or 100 children maybe?
Probably,
that might be pushing it?
Probably about 75 at City Center.
That's a lot.
Yes. So if we look at that.
That's 5% of the need, supposedly.
So look at that. Look at the centers that have empty classrooms and figure out how to open them before we build big infrastructure.
Right.
After the classrooms are filled, then look at, is there still a demand? Is there still a need to build big buildings? And catch those that aren't in care already. And that's the hard part. How, if you build a new building, everyone's going to want to go there.
Right,
That's
the shiny new thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I don't blame the families.
cannibalization.
Yeah, so we all need to come up with an equitable system for all centers.
I know you can't speak for them, but would it make sense, as we have school systems, including the Catholic school system, closing schools and having a lot of building capacity, should we be retrofitting these already well-built buildings that probably have sprinklers, the whole 9 yards, right? I mean, you need those. I mean, should we be redeploying them in this space?
Maybe.
That way you're not building a new building, you're just renovating, right? There's some church overcapacity, isn't there?
And I think about, the Mercy Center for Women. Jenny Haggerty has a wonderful, she's just growing and growing and growing into like the Holy Rosary, and has wonderful opportunities for homeless families. And there are children there. So how can we help those children go to a safe place so their parents can work and get back on their feet?
It makes me wonder too, is it time for some of these industries that have a lot of young families to think, hey, if I do a 2,000 square foot bump out and build a childcare center, that might be an opportunity too. I don't know. Possibly.
There's models around. So if you look at the Early Learning Investment Commission, there's a team that talks about that. What does that look like? Sheets has a system where they have so many spots available just for Sheets employees, and then local families can utilize that too.
So they are actually facilitating.
Yes, not in Erie,
that makes a lot of sense. So yeah. So there's another part of this, right?
Right.
If you're looking for workers and you are at a certain pay level, maybe you can offer $100 a week stipend for childcare. Do you have folks doing that?
Yes, there are systems that support some working families in that manner.
Like their own employees,
yes,
employee stipend.
It actually goes straight to the centers, to reimburse for childcare a certain
and then you
percentage
give the Joe Schmo Incorporated, the Acme Incorporated discount.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
You're going to get reimbursed from Acme Incorporated.
Yes, absolutely. There's
really a lot of ways to kind of go at this.
Yes, multiple funding streams is the best way
Are
to
you
go.
glad that people are at least talking about this now? Because you probably went several years in your career where it was like flying under the radar. Oh, we just can't do anything about it. There's no money.
Yes, there's so many things, especially after 2020. But the childcare staffing crisis was falling apart years before that.
Sure.
So I'm so glad it's in the forefront now. Yes, we all have to work together to solve this. There's no silver bullet. We all just have to work together to figure this out.
And again, like we were saying off the air, this is a very personal decision for each family, right?
Correct.
Some people don't have a choice.
Right.
If they're a single parent, they want to go to work, and they need some help, right?
Absolutely, and they deserve it. They want to work. They want to do better in their life. So why not figure out a way to help them? And then eventually they won't be able to need to use the services. If we've seen people increase in their skill set at work, and it's a wonderful thing to see.
Are you having to really advise these? I mean, young families that have a brand new child, they've been working, they have the kid. This is a whole new space.
I would think the ELRC, the Early Learning Resource Center, when families come to them, they see a little bit more of that. They give them a list of childcare centers. They provide resources. Absolutely.
So that's a good first stop, you would say, Michelle?
That's a really good first stop, yes.
Well, how do you get a hold of them?
I don't know their number by heart, but online, ELRC 1, Early Learning Resource Center 1, yes, they have great staff that can help. And they have a lot of resources for families at all levels of income to help them.
And if a parent or grandparent's hearing this, saying, my son or daughter, they would be amazing. They're those child whisperers, right? They get the baby to fall asleep or whatever.
They do.
I mean, would you take a phone call to somebody to find out more about this career?
Absolutely. You're welcome to reach out to us. We have on our website, if anyone's interested, information on our apprenticeship program, pre-apprenticeship program for the high schoolers. Just go to earlyconnectionserie.org and you can look online and, type an inquiry out. We'd be happy to help you.
I hope you'll come back. I think this is one of those crucial Erie issues. I mean, it's in our top 3 here. And it always comes back to this, because in order to engage a workforce, we need to provide. And you mentioned transportation. Maybe we need to talk more about that. And we've got a good person in EMTA and Jeremy Peterson. I mean, where they are really trying to fit this transportation need to what the community is asking for, right? I mean, they're doing their own strategic studies right now. This is a good place for Erie to be, is in the understanding and studying and data collection, but then we also have to act.
Correct. Data is going to drive how we act, right? Or how we react to. Yes, so that's important to gather the data, and then we all have to put our heads together and figure this out. Beautiful.
Michelle Harkins, the Executive Director of Early Connections, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It is 5 in front of 5.
Already?
Yes.